What up, guys? Amar here, back again for a review of last night's Phish show, Night 3 in Mexico, 2/23/19. So let's kick it off. So, the opener, Curtain With. This is one of my absolute favorite Phish tunes. And one thing I love about it is that we don't quite know whether they're going to play Curtain With or the regular Curtain, and I don't think they know either until Trey actually comes in with the part. And as you guys probably know, Curtain, the With part of Curtain was repurposed into Rift. I think they moved the key, so Rift is in G. The With part of Curtain is an E flat, and one of the reasons I love it is that that jam in Curtain, it's so just, it's got this feeling that makes me feel like I'm floating. It's such a it's just such a beautiful jam, and I think my favorite version, one of the best ones I ever heard was an old one. It was whatever show they played it at Colorado 88. I think it might have been one of the Roma shows. I can't quite remember, but I remember that, listening to that when it first came out. And I think I had an old school soundboard or something, but when they made the official release, I remember listening to that Curtain, and you can kind of see the glimpse of the greatness that was to come when Phish was still playing bars in the 80s. But I thought the Curtain was really good. One thing is that I felt like it started much slower than it normally is, and they all kind of have to start together, right? Because Trey comes in with however he plays it, he comes in with that, and they all came in together like they're supposed to, but it seemed a little bit slower, and I think as the song progressed, they started to get a little bit closer to a normal tempo. And one thing that popped out at me was that during the first vocal refrain, or the first set of vocals, as he saw his life run away from him, that part is usually a cappella, meaning there's a 4-part harmony. Each of the guys are singing a part. And they're singing a chord, right? They're each singing different notes, and they stack up and they make a nice chord. And one thing that was interesting last night is that Trey was actually comping, and comping is comp is short for accompany. So he was playing the chords that they were singing on the guitar, which is pretty unusual. I don't think I've heard him do that. And if you guys have, let me know. I'd love to hear a version where he actually is playing during that first a cappella part, where normally no one's playing an instrument, they're just singing. So that popped out at me. I thought that was really interesting. Also, I don't remember the actual, I think something like that. So that's what he was playing, and one thing that was so that's a little half step bend, and one thing that Trey is really good at is sometimes he'll overbend, and if you overbend it sounds really sour. And one thing I noticed is that he was doing that a little bit. He was going and he did that, and he heard it, and he corrected. He only did it kind of once every time. He did it once, and then he'd correct him, which I thought was great. He's got such good ears, and he's so sensitive to bends. And a lot of my favorite guitar players overbend a lot, and they don't self-correct, and I'm guilty of that as a guitar player. But Trey is so good at self-correcting when he overbends, especially on something that's a very strict part like the Curtain. And the jam I thought was really good, and they kind of, with jams, I feel like, I know everyone's kind of in a different place about this, but sometimes it feels like a jam kind of wanders, may go on too long. Sometimes it feels like a jam is too short. The jam in the Curtain last night I thought was the perfect length. It was just enough for them to really explore a bit, and they all winded down together, which I thought was really good. Next, Punch You in the Eye. And so the Curtain with that clocked in at just under 15 minutes. So great version. So Punch You in the Eye. The intro, I love Punch. It is one of my, I just that kind of the jam in the beginning. I don't remember how to. that kind of part. It's got such like a kind of like ravey sound, and I love it when they stretch out a little bit, and they're all kind of rhythmically playing, and and they were doing that a little bit last night, and that for me is never long enough. That's just like 2001. I love those kind of ravey, dancey tunes that like Punch, and the beginning of that is so so good, and I thought they did the intro really well last night. Trey missed a few changes, and he totally he forgot how to play the that part. I remember he was doing this. He was going doing something like that. He wasn't quite playing it right. But then they drop it back into the A. So he messed up a little bit, but not enough to make it really bad. And one thing I noticed is that there was Trey had a little bit of a hard time singing Punch because he's not really singing. He's almost like kind of rapping, during, right? Because he's not da 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 da. He's not like really singing a part. I know he sings a few notes, but he's basically rapping, right? He's not. It's not like a vocal melody that he sings during Punch. And he had a little bit of, from what I remember, he had some trouble keeping up with the vocals because I think he was kind of reading the lyrics off the prompter and doing that and trying to be rhythmically on time. And I think he had a little bit of trouble with that. And also, so this is, so as you guys know, they go into, the landlady got absorbed into Punch, I think at some point in the early 90s. And they sped landlady up, and now it's part of Punch You in the Eye. And Trey, I feel like every time I've seen Punch, he has a little bit of trouble with the landlady. It's not an easy tune, especially since it's pretty up tempo. But he had some trouble playing landlady. He was playing it very timidly. Like the main. He was playing that part very, very timidly, kind of weakly. He didn't seem very confident, and I swear this was kind of an assist by Phish. Phish slowed down. He kind of dropped time a little bit, which dropping time just means he slows down a little. And dropping time during a song is something that most professionals, it's kind of like the bane of their existence in terms of when people slow up or speed up during. Again, I'm not talking about an improvisation. I'm talking about like a song. But I swear Phish did it to kind of help Trey out a little bit because he was having trouble with the landlady. That again could have been totally in my head. I could be wrong about that. I just felt like he heard that Trey was having trouble keeping up, playing the leads in Landlady, and Phish slowed down a little bit to help him out. But I could have been making that up in my head. And he missed. And at the end of the Landlady, there's this big E7 sharp 9 going back into going back into Punch, and Trey missed that big chord, which was very sour to me. And also when Trey played over Page's solo, and so Punch happens. Oh Wilson. So after they go out of Landlady, they do the and they do like the and then they go back into the Landlady, and then Trey kind of solos a bit, and they go back into that dissonant part, and then Page solos. And I remember when Page was soloing, Trey couldn't quite comp under. I think he may have briefly forgot the chords. There's a lot of them in the Landlady. It's basically it's a jazz tune to me, and he kind of a couple points he just kind of stopped playing and let Page kind of carry it by himself. And during that, so just. That's one thing that, like, during that part of Punch where they're doing like the and then they go back into the Landlady, that part is so hard to play because there's no right notes there. It's 100% done by feel. It's not composed. They're improvising their way through that climb. And then for them, it's like the amount of of skill it takes to do that as a band, especially with Kuroda too, because he has to anticipate what they're doing, because when they hit that final high note, he blacks out the lights or something, and they go back into the Landlady solo. It's so hard to do. It's done completely by feel. And I think there's a live Phish, I think it was 7/8 2000, I want to say, where they play Punch. And from what I remember, that one is so good. And they, back in the day, they used to nail those perfectly. And to me, it's a complete magic trick. I have no idea how to me, it's so telepathic the way they can do that. So like last night, they didn't quite hit those high notes, but I give them a lot of slack, because it's freaking impossible to be able to do that perfectly every time. So they kind of miss some of those changes, but again, they're not strict changes. It's loosely improvised. And when they do hit it, to me, it's like a home run. I'm so impressed. So Punch overall was very good. After that, we had Blaze On, a newer tune that I love. I think it's so happy and positive. And it's I don't want to say it's corny is the wrong word, but it's so it's a little bit on the nose for Phish, but I will never get sick of hearing it. I think it's really it's a great fun song, and it's very easy for them. Like it's basically a blues that they modified, and there's this one line where Trey sings, "You've got that something about a red dress," and I remember he pointed to someone, and I thought that was pretty funny. I think there was a group of Phish chicks that were wearing red dresses last night. Also in Blaze On, there was a funky minor jam. I think they're in C, and Trey did this kind of melodic sal in it, which is basically a group of notes that have a pattern. Like he was doing something like that. I don't know why I pointed that out to myself in my notes. And then so Trey tags out of the jam by singing Blaze On. And then they kept jamming a little bit after that, and for a few moments after that, it got quiet and deep, and it was pretty good. So I thought Blaze On was well played. After that, Destiny Unbound. So I may be jaded, because I'm a huge fan of Destiny, and I think my favorite version that they ever played was the famous Nassau '03 version. I think that really set the benchmark for the song. It was, the groove during that version is so perfect. The pocket is just, it's deep as the ocean. Everything is just so right there. The jam was really good. So I feel like every version of Destiny I've heard since that has never quite come close to that level of groove. I know it's unfair of me to I think anytime as Phish fans, if we always try to get a song to measure up to our favorite version, we're gonna fall short. But that's just something that I feel in Destiny, that so like last night when they were playing it, the groove during the actual song to me was very not there. It didn't really seem like they were gelling, and a big part of that is between Mike and Phish, and they're so synced up most of the time that when they don't quite lock in, it really sticks out to me. I saw other people saying how much they love Destiny, so that could have been completely in my head, but I really, to me, the way they played the song itself, the groove just wasn't quite there. But the jam, when they got to the jam, I think it's like the during that jam, I thought that's when the groove really started to solidify, and I thought it started to get really good. So that's from at that point, I thought that's when it started to gel. And Trey did a couple Jerry pull-offs like that. He did a couple of those, and he doesn't do that much, which is why I wrote it in my notes, but I thought that was pretty funny. And the tag out of the jam sounded weird to me. So Trey plays doonga doon da do. He plays that tag to get out of the jam, and something about it didn't sound quite right to me. But and also the bridge of the song was a little bit botched. just in terms of the chords. There's a lot of chords in that song, and it's pretty simple, but in a lot of Phish songs, even the simple ones, they don't follow logical patterns a lot of the times. But I do love Destiny. I'm glad they played. I'm happy it's back in rotation and not a rarity. I wouldn't be happy if they played it once every 10 or 15 years. Like, I think, they played it, like 91 and then 03 or something. But I'm happy it's back. I do hope the groove solidifies a little bit better. But again, that could have been completely in my head, and the groove could have been fine. After that, Most Events Aren't Planned. I love Vita Blue. To me, they are the original trio with Russell Batiste and O'Teal. I was at that show, I think, Roseland, I want to say New Year's Eve. It was either New Year's Eve 2001 Roseland, where the original Vita Blue trio played. And I think at that show, the Encore, Trey and Mike both came out. They did Light Up or Leave Me Alone. And I love Vita Blue. I think the combination of Russell, Batiste, and O'Teal was just like the rhythm section from heaven. Those guys are just complete monsters. And the way they served the Vita Blue tunes, I thought was amazing. And hopefully, I'd love to see a resurgence one of those days. One of these days. But Most Events Aren't Planned, I thought was pretty well played. That's one tune that I really hope comes back into their song rotation a little bit more consistently. One thing that stuck out to me was that, so during the vocal, waiting patiently, da 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 da, during that part, I think in the original record, Page is playing the vocal line while singing it, but this time Trey was playing it while Page was singing it, and it wasn't quite matching up. They couldn't quite get it together because it's a hard thing to do when the vocal isn't completely set in stone, like the phrasing, the way Page sings it. So what happened is instead of so at one point Trey abandoned playing the vocal line on the guitar that Page was singing, and they did like a call and response. So it'd be like Page would sing like waiting patiently, and then Trey would answer him, and I thought that sounded really good. So they kind of adjusted on the fly when they felt that it wasn't working. And one thing that was cool was that because it's a Page tune, that he was really leading all of the he was leading the song, he was leading the jams, and I remember at one point there's a change in the song where they're playing, and like the camera focused on Page during the stream, and I could see him kind of counting, and he had his hand up and he was kind of counting, and he was doing it to himself. He wasn't like looking at the band, but he was counting to himself, and then he like kind of punched in the change when it happened. So I love it when someone other than Trey is kind of has the conductor baton, so to speak. And there were two jams in the song, and there's that one really kind of dancey, techno-y jam, which is good. I thought it was a little bit short. Maybe it was the second jam that was short. But there were two jams in the song, and I thought they were both pretty well played. So yeah, Most Events Aren't Planned, I thought was really well done. Divided Sky was next. This one hit 14 minutes. And Divided Sky, pretty standard tune. Obviously, a masterpiece of a composition that is yeah. I mean, what can I say about Divided Sky that hasn't already been said? The only thing that popped out to me was there's that one part where Trey goes up the diminished scale and there's chords where it's like right up there, and then the highest note Trey missed, which was a little bit disappointing. That's one song that to me has to be played perfectly for me to really love it. That part was good though. And that point it sounds like Trey's tube screamers or whatever overdrive he was using. I know he's got a bunch of overdrive settings and his amp channel switching nowadays, but his tone sounded super just jacked. Like, oh, my voice just cracked. Super jacked. It was really, it was like going from overdrive almost to distortion at that point. At least that's the way it sounded to me on the stream. His sustain was pretty good on that part, because that part he has to hold that note for like a few bars, and he did that really well. And like I talked about yesterday, sustain isn't this thing where you just pluck a note and the guitar does the work for you. It's in the fingers. But Divided Sky I thought was good. The jam was good. Nothing out of the ordinary. Well played. After that was Steam. I'm a big fan of Steam. I think it's good. I love that groove. Like I think it's Sanjita. And I thought it was well played. And one thing that was funny is that the at one point, so when they sing the chorus, the big fog rush happens every time where the stage gets enveloped in fog. And poor Paige, I remember seeing like whatever key, I don't remember what he's playing, maybe an organ or something, whatever he's playing during that song. Like this, like the steam vent was like right in front of his face. So like every time the chorus happened, you saw him kind of like grimace and like brace himself to get blown in the face by the steam, which I thought was pretty funny. But he was a sport about it. Chalk Dust came after that 10-minute version. I thought it was good. The jam started really mellow, and a lot of times in Chalk Dust, especially in the early days when the jam comes, they rip right out of the gate. The Trey would come in with those really heavy blues licks, but this time they didn't. It started off really kind of mellow and exploratory instead of ripping, which was really cool. It started off kind of meditative and then got a little bit more dissonant, which is cool to see. And this is another one where it just kind of kept peaking and peaking and peaking, kind of getting more intense. I thought the jam was pretty good. And this is another thing. So the ending of this tune was from my notes. It was completely botched. There's the final part. So they tag out of the jam when Trey goes do da da do da do da do do. Right. They play that, and then they go back into the chorus. And then the final part of the song where they're ascending, the do da da do ba do ba da do ba do ba da do ba do ba do ba do ba do ba. So during that part, Fishman does like he almost does like the same thing every time in terms of like the roll that he's doing on the snare. But last night he was doing some kind of weird accents that sounded good. But as soon as he started doing it, I was like, this is gonna mess everyone up. I just had a feeling that he was doing it, and it wasn't bad. I thought it actually sounded great, but because that part feels so set in stone, and he kind of stepped out of he was coloring outside the lines a bit. Excuse me. And I knew it was going to mess up. And then finally, sure enough, when they got to the final that part was missed. I think the light, I think Kuroda hit it at the right time, but I think somebody messed up, and it was kind of like ugh. And Fishman, I remember the camera zoomed in on him after, and he was smiling. He was like, "Guys, it's not my fault," and it wasn't. But I just thought that was funny. Set 2, first tube opener. And I'm sure you guys have seen the videos by now of poor Trey. He was going full rock star and jumping up and down, and he tumbled at one point, kind of ate it. And I'm glad he's okay. I know it's he jumps around a lot, and I don't see him tumble too often. But he took a spill during first two, but he's a trooper. So he woke up and he got up and looked like he was fine. And one thing, again, this is complete opinion. First tube, I've always liked it when when Trey's tone is clean, and has that pop in first tube, like the right, that's to me the way it's always kind of been played, kind of clean, short staccato where the notes are detached from each other. But last night he had this pretty thick overdrive on, and he was playing, which to me doesn't quite sound as good, especially considering how tight the groove is between Mike and Phish. I didn't like the way he was playing it, just my opinion. But part of the reason I love Phish is that they never play the same song the same way twice. So it's just something that I noticed that stylistically I prefer when Trey's playing in the melodies. It's a little bit cleaner and a little bit poppier rather than like long and legato. Trey did a backwards delay solo for a little bit, which is cool. The jam was good, and Trey went full Jedi at the end, where he took his guitar and started doing the whammy thing and lifted it up, which is always a treat. Mike's song after that. Okay, so Mike's song. All right. So the intro, Trey was not playing it confidently, which is weird because he called the tune. I remember him going over to, he went to someone at the end of first two, and he very clearly like said something, and he launched into Mike's. So like the intro, right? So that intro, he was not like I think he was doing some like he wasn't quite playing it right. He wasn't. I don't want to say maybe he wasn't playing it. I'm not going to say he wasn't playing it right. He wasn't playing it confidently. Like the notes weren't quite all there. And I swear to God, if you listen back, you can actually hear Paige kind of play Trey's part very gently underneath him to be like, "Hey, dude, this is where we are." I could be, that could have been my imagination, but I'm like 90% sure if you listen back to that Mike song, you can hear Paige kind of playing Trey's part underneath Trey during the intro to give it a little bit more oomph, because that intro has to be played strongly, otherwise it just kind of falls flat, which I thought it lacked a little bit of oomph when they started up, and there was a little bit of a flub in the final there's a part. Right, and they go back into the F sharp minor. Are they going to the F sharp minor for the jam? There's that final hit that somebody missed, and that's one thing that always gets me. Is that that's one part that to me has to be played just right for it to really be good. The jam had some cool moments when they did get into it. I thought it was really good. Sorry, camera fritzed out again. What were we talking about? We're talking about Mike's song. So we're talking about how Trey had some. The jam had some cool moments in Mike's song, and then at the very end, they played the old ending, the ba da da ba 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 da 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 boom da chka chka. Oh, that was really good. I love that old ending. And then they went into, this was a little bit disappointing for me. So after Mike's, they went into Weekapaug, which is, I think, there were 4 times that Mike's was played directly into Weekapaug. I think this might have been the 4th time in Phish history. I could be wrong about that. But it was I think it was the 4th time it was ever played, and the first since '98. So the only thing that was disappointing about it to me was that they end Mike's, and then there was no kind of smooth segue. One thing I love about Phish is when a song ends like Mike's, and I don't think anybody quite knows what they're going into, including the 4 guys on stage and everyone. So there's always that kind of like what's going to happen next moment, which that's what we live for. But when Trey went to Weekapaug, I think he just started playing the riff. But he was playing it. It was very, very slow, and to me, Weekapaug has to be fast and driving, but this time it was slow and mellow, which I'm not a fan of. Again, this is stylistic preference. I prefer that song to be fast driving, but I remember, but the groove, it was chill, relaxed rather than hard and driving. But it was. I thought the song was well played. Mike was slapping the shit out of his part, and I love Mike's slap part in Weekapaug. I learned it at one point, and it's a wrist workout. It is not easy, but he does it so. It's like he's brushing his teeth. It's so easy for him. I could go on all day about how good Mike is, as I'm sure you guys could too. There was also a little the fat guy in a little coat riff. As also known as I think Freddie King had a song called San Jose that turned that into an actual melody. But back in I think winter '03, Trey was playing that lick every night, and it's just funny to hear that again. Fat guy in a little coat. There's also a Mr. PC tease in Weekapaug, and Mr. PC is a song by John Coltrane, written for the legendary bass player Paul Chambers. So he teased that a little bit, but I think he played it slow, and it was really cool to hear a Coltrane tease from Trey. I know they've definitely teased it in the past. I've heard it. I think especially in the late '80s, early '90s, and seen a little asterisk for a Mr. PC tease for other songs. So it's just cool to hear that. After that was Fuego. The segue into this seemed a little bit awkward to me, and Trey was trying to switch his pickups. Or at least mess with the settings while playing the intro, which he kind of ruined the flow a little bit for me. So Trey, what else happened in Fuego? The first jam was good. The first jam, the boom, where Phish is doing that really ridiculous beat. The jam was good. One thing that was really cool that happened in Fuego was that Trey turned on the backwards delay, and he was playing the backwards delay, and at one point he turned off the delay and tried to emulate playing backwards, playing normally. And it happened, I think it must have been like 15 seconds where the backwards delay ended, and he tried doing that. And it was a really cool thing to see. He's such an inventive guitar player, even still to this day. He always, every show without exception, he does something that knocks me out. And that was kind of one moment where I could tell he turned off the delay, and he was like, I'm going to try to play backwards, but not use an effect. Try to simulate that kind of sweepy, swirling feeling. Which I thought was really cool. After that was Tweezer. The segue into this one was awkward. So scratch what I said about Trey switching pickups about in Fuego. I actually meant this. This was about Tweezer. So Trey in Tweezer, Trey. So in that, that's when Trey was basically like he was playing the lick and trying to switch pickups back and forth, try to get the right sound, and it kind of ruined the flow a little bit for me. But the song was played well. Trey was rhythmically soloing in between verses. Like he was doing that kind of rhythmic soloing where he's not like playing leads, but he's doing that kind of stuff in between verses, which was cool rather than just playing the Tweezer riff. The look who's in the freezer, that dissonant part, look who's in the right, and then they go into some weirdness. I thought that was really cool. The jam started off very quiet, very pensive, and a lot of listening was happening. And it didn't kind of start out swinging. It was really had that meditative kind of feel. There was a lot of really beautiful interplay between Trey and Page during that Tweezer, where again, no one was really soloing, but it was this kind of cool. They were both kind of playing chords and weaving around each other, and it was beautiful from what I remember. They modulated to D major, which is pretty cool. This is one point where Trey was doing some loops, and he's got this button on his rig. I think it's called the once button, where he can play a loop, he can record a loop, and then tap that button, and it'll just play that loop once. And he was doing some looping that was out of time. Like it wasn't like a perfect rhythmic loop. It was a lick that he had looped that was wasn't a strict amount of beats that kind of fell nicely in the bar. So what he was doing is he was playing this lick on, and he was hammering that button with his foot, and I could see that the rest of the band had to kind of work hard to keep time, and that's not a slight against them. It's something that, because they're all such careful listeners and they listen to each other so much, and what one person plays influences what's happening in the rest of the jam. I could see them kind of like, they heard that Trey was rhythmically kind of pushing the envelope, and they were working really hard. Phish and Mike particularly were working hard to kind of keep that groove locked, which was really fun to see. Excuse me. There's a lot of great experimental effects usage by Trey, and he did, at one point he did this thing where he it almost sounded like a cello. I don't remember what effect he was using. I'm sure he pitch bended himself down with a whammy. And that was when the jam started to cool down. There's a nice little segue to Carini. Carini was played with a lot of conviction, which is awesome. And like Carini, I feel like every Carini I've heard in 3.0 I've loved. So that's one that they always kick ass on. At one point, someone let out like a blood curdling scream. It had to have been Phish. So someone like let out like one of those screams, and everyone started cracking up. Just a funny moment. They modulated up to A major. Carini's in E minor, I believe. They modulated up to A, and they were doing this kind of thing where it was kind of like a Weekapaug reprise. but they were playing that progression, and it sounded okay to me. I wasn't a huge fan, but I always love it when they try and stretch out. And then there was a little bit of a segue back into Tweezer after Carini, where Trey played the riff for a little bit, and then they went into Ghost, and that felt like that came out of nowhere. Tweezer and Ghost are both in A minor, so it kind of made sense. Started very slow. Trey speeded it up and brought it up to tempo. So Ghost was 3 minutes and 53 seconds, so very short Ghost. Wasn't any real jam in it, but they went into S.A.N.T.O.S. After that. I love S.A.N.T.O.S, and I'm guessing you guys do too. There's some great shredding by Trey and S.A.N.T.O.S. There's a nice big hard peak, and I felt like it was the real first big rock star peak of the entire night, and it didn't happen until the end of set 2. So that was cool. Encore was simple, which was really... Oh, so the encore was just pure hijinks. It was one of those classic kind of... I'm sure the staff working the venue was like, what is wrong with these people that go to see a band that plays like this? So it was just absolute madness. So Simple had a nice little jam. And there was a miscommunication at the end of Simple where Phish started playing a beat, and it sounded like he was playing a beat to a newer song. I can't remember what it was, but then Trey stopped him because he wanted to play Martian Monster. And I think right before Phish started that beat, Paige did the "Your Trip Is Short" thing on his sampler. So there's a little bit of miscommunication there, but they went to Martian Monster. There was a Spanish Moon tease in there. And it kind of had a mashup vibe, right? It wasn't like a segue into Spanish Moon. Trey started singing Spanish Moon on top of Martian Monster. They're both in C minor. Made sense. There was also a Death Don't Hurt tease, a Sanity tease where Trey kept talking about how the stars suck. And then they went into Kung, and there's this hysterical moment where they're like, stand up. And at one point, I don't think this is like an official lyric in Kung, but Phish is playing, and he goes, "Stand up, goddamn you!" And it was, I think I was drinking a beer, and I almost spit beer out of my nose. I was laughing so hard. It was just so funny. Then went to a Big Black Furry Creature after that. And what was funny was Mike was teasing Fuego while they were singing Big Black Furry Creature. He was singing the O's right in Big Black Furry Creature. After that was Sleeping Monkey, where Trey thanked Dan from CID and kind of thanked the crowd. And he was kind of, I think this might have been a Coventry poke at Paige. He was like, "Paige, is there anything you want to say?" And Paige was like, "I promise I wasn't going to cry." And then they kind of, it was just a really, kind of came out of nowhere that they were making fun of how adorable and emotional Paige is, which is why we, of course, love him. And Trey also gave away Paige's sweat rag. It was right there on Paige's rig, and Trey just took it and threw it to the audience. Another funny moment. And after that was and there's an audience sing along in Sleeping Monkey, where Phish was during the Home on the Train part, he asked the audience to sing along with him, and the audience, I mean, at least on the stream, I mean, you guys have amazing pitch collectively. It sounded so good. The time was good. A lot of times when I hear audience sing-alongs outside of Phish, the pitch isn't great and the timing is well off. But I mean, all you guys singing along during Sleeping Monkey really blew me away. I thought the audience sing-along part was really good. And after that was Tweeprize. Of course, we expected after they played Tweezer, and that was the show. What did you guys think? What was your favorite night of the run? Any standout jams that you enjoyed? Let me know in the comments. I gotta run. I hope you guys have a killer day. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.